the protests yesterday, and on Tuesday, and really made the movement that's been started by the Gen Zs to look bad. And as I was looking at that, I remember, sometimes I compare them with what is happening in the North Rift with the bandits. There's a formula to get rid of the bandits, but it never happens. There's this other movement that was started by the Gen Zs, which is good for the country. Then these bad guys come and really mess up the whole thing, and burning people's businesses is really not the way to go. And some of these things don't happen in a vacuum. There must be other people who are coordinating the goons and all that. And I would implore on the government to make sure that those people who are actually sponsoring some of these young men to go and do destruction. There's a video that was on social media. I don't know how true that was. Probably even Kiprono probably saw it. That apparently some young men lining up in some offices in Nairobi to get money to go and do the destruction. If that's really true, that is something that is very regrettable coming from our people. But I will look at this, what's happening the last 2 weeks. The first week I was not in the country, and then I came back on Saturday and then left. I was in Abu Dhabi and Dubai for the last 1 week. And looking at the two countries, the two Emirates, you go to Dubai, you drive to Dubai, you've been there many times, you go to Abu Dhabi, and you see the shift in matters of economic development, matters of everything that has to do with what Dubai is today. And the difference between those two Emirates is really just the mindset. And if you're able to address the mindset that we have in terms of our economic model, our political model, our governance model, and we have those three models to really look to our aspirations as a country, we can go far. And at this time, we have the best opportunity, and President Ruto has the best opportunity now to hit the reset button and set the country in the right direction. They came in with a mandate to change this country from the bottom-up economic development model. And apparently immediately after that, we didn't see much of that taking place. And I was listening to the Senate yesterday, and for the first time I was actually proud of our Parliament, because real discussions were taking place. People are actually looking inwards to see where we have gone wrong. And listening to the senators, and especially the senator from the young senator from Kericho, very eloquent young man, very smart young man, and him talking about corruption and others talking about corruption as one of the bigger problems that we have in this country that has been there since the beginning of the Republic. But we have to address that. And part of, Kiprono's mention of Lee Kuan Yew, I also admire Lee Kuan Yew greatly.
But before you go to the Lee Kuan Yew factor, but the question is, of course, what we saw on the floor of the House, everyone was asking. I could see on the other side, both panelists also wanted to chime in and say, maybe, of course, they're speaking so impassionately right now because they know how the furor of the whole populace is in the country. Is it just for political expediency? Because many of them have had the same flow, right, to speak on these issues they've not spoken to. Why is this the providential time for them to really speak so impassionately and look so remorseful? So should we buy it that this is really genuinely coming from the deepest recesses of their hearts at the end of the day?
And I think the temperature, the political temperature in the country has changed. The political realities in the country has changed. And I can tell you, in 2027, we have this almost 15, 16 million young people within the Gen Z generation. That's an additional 16 or 17 million voters. We encourage them to register to vote so they can also play their part in 2027. And I am anticipating probably one of the highest turnovers in Parliament in the history of this country because of this reawakening that we have seen that is coming from Gen Zs. So they have a right to be scared. And if they don't do the right thing now, 2027, 2/3 of Parliament will be out.
Yeah, maybe you will say with that particular figure of 16 million voters, yeah, ceteris paribus, if everything remains constant, that we won't have any breakdowns of, machinery there at immigration that now will have a stock of excuse, for the last 1 month, we can't issue IDs. There are all manner of excuses will come. But if now they'll be particularly intent on going to register and be having also the voter's card and they're given the ID, I think that will diametrically change the brand of politics in this country moving forward. But let us just get down to the main brass tacks issues that have been raised, silent ones, first of all, because the president has indicated that moving forward from his speech, we shall be now dealing with corruption, head on, right? So I'm setting my face like a Flintstone and we are going to stanch the flow of corruption in this country. I mean, we've had this talk before, right? No sacred cow will be spared. So people are saying, can you begin with your own cabinet? Dissolve it. And the people who have been implicated, start with them, right? Why should we have sacred cows also within your cabinet? Should we dissolve the whole cabinet, just give it a fresh start, reset it? And people are hacking back to, the administration of Mwai Kibaki. For 2 months, he stayed without a cabinet. Just to reset, the whole government structure again, start afresh, that we can see there is an intent of you moving forward and giving it a clean slate. Kiprono.
I think for me, what Gen Z has done is take us to the brink, the edge. We're at the precipice. We are at a point where if we don't, unbundle this problem and face it head on, then the high likelihood is that, like a tsunami, we will be washed away. The leadership of this country are people of my generation. I went to university with President Ruto. I went to the youth service at the university with the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And really, I think it is incumbent upon them to save the reputation of our generation by doing the right thing. What the Gen Zs have done is call out what it is that is really ailing this society. And again, I said at the beginning that it is high time that we addressed the economic model of this country, we addressed the political model of this country. What would I do? If I was in the shoes of the president today, I would do 3 things. Number 1 is it is a high time that we had a national convention where all these things are brought to the table. I would invite the faith-based organizations, I'd invite the civil society, I'd invite the private sector, I'd invite the executive, the judiciary, parliament, and most importantly, I would give the youth a seat on the high table to have these conversations, and it need not be for a short period of time. It's happened in many countries where you have an extended national convention where nothing is spared. And like I said, we are in the information age, so all this information is in the public domain. All these ideas are there. And together, as stakeholders in this country, because we have no other country that we call home, we can address the challenges that bedevil this country. With regard to the question that the entire cabinet be scrapped, I think for me that's perhaps not solving the problem, because within the cabinet there are very many competent people who deserve to be where they are. However, there are also very many inexperienced and incompetent people who deserve to go. So I think in that, maybe we need to give the president the latitude as provided to him by the Constitution to choose whom he wants to work with. However, a meritocracy is what's going to usher us to the next level. The second thing that I think we need to do with regard to the budgeting process, because this is where the problem began. The debt that this country has got right now, which is today in the region of 11.5 trillion Kenya shillings, is a crystallization of debts carried forward from previous regime. These debts have crystallized under the leadership of President Ruto. What would have been my response if I was in his shoes? I would have probably started off by insisting that going forward we operate with the principle of a balanced budget. A balanced budget meaning you appropriate only that which you earn. I would also make sure that we address the issue of pending bills. Many of the commercial sectors in Kenya are suffering or reeling in unprofitability because of pending bills which has a knock-on effect. Because if you're a contractor who has received some deliveries, who have taken things from hardwares, as a result of not being paid by government, you cannot then unpay, your suppliers downstream. And again, there are fundamental issues with our tax regime system, because revenue authorities expect that you will pay your VAT on the 20th, notwithstanding the fact that you haven't been paid, even where government itself is the defaulter in terms of paying. I've advocated before, when I was the president of the National Chamber of Commerce, that we probably need to have, at this moment in time, a tax clearing house, where if you're owed money by government and you are owing taxes, there should be an exchange where you can net your taxes off that's what you're owed by government. Because we see the moment you don't pay your taxes, you immediately go into a very high penal regime by the revenue authorities, and that can very quickly take you into bankruptcy.
I thought maybe on the defraying of that, the issue of, because now you can forget it, that you can actually get a refund from government when it comes to VAT, yes.
You know
so
that,
they'll say, of course, we have this,
so
but we can offset it, yes.
Why don't we have a clearinghouse?
So they just established that formally.
So that eventually what you're paid will be net off what you owed in taxation. The third thing is obviously to cut wastage. I mean, we've talked so many things, but the reality of the matter is that there is so much wastage in government. I don't know how many of you have gone to conferences in Naivasha when these government operatives are present. These guys will come in I don't know how many gas guzzlers, how many helicopters, how much per diem, how many staff. If you travel, and you've traveled to Abu Dhabi last week, and if you ended up in the plane with the leaders of government, in the political and the civil service, you'll be surprised at how many support staff they have in their plane. And that's the reality. The extent of our wastage is at a level that is not tenable anymore. Within the budgetary process as well, there is the whole issue of appropriating funds that have not gone through the proper approval system of Parliament. And that is a bad precedent that this government has taken over from the previous government. The previous government began the trend of actually appropriating money that has not been duly approved by Parliament. And those bad manners have gone on to this government, and that must stop. And the whole issue of hidden budgetary allocations. This office has got a slash fund that is not subjected to audit. I believe that as Kenyans, we are past the stage where we want to see those type of things. Everything should have a budget, a name, and it should be within a proper appropriation code with clarity in terms of what those funds will be used for. Finally, on leadership, I think it is a high time that we really develop a new code of leadership conduct. We need to revisit our values. We need to look at the ethos. What is it that we stand for as Kenyans? In the fight against corruption, I do believe that it is also a high time that as a country we adopted a different approach. We need to digitize the fight against corruption. We need to be able to get on a platform where you can name and shame corrupt leaders. We've seen governors who make demands to pay pending bills for 40 and 50% of the value. That's to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. We need our leadership, our entire leadership, from the president downwards, to be subjected to a lifestyle audit.
All right.
We cannot have a situation where suddenly you hear this 5,000 acres belongs to so and so, 10,000 acres, this business has gone to so and so, the other business goes to so. So if we see just now that the president is earning 1.4 million shillings, even he should lead by example and subject himself to a lifestyle audit.
All right. Edith, I'd interrupted you on Leo Ku. You wanted to...
No, just wanted to mention
let it fly.
Look when you... I was coming to corruption, and how we have defined corruption is such an amorphous term that is really an abstraction. What we need to do to start fighting corruption is actually to put some teeth in the word corruption and start dissecting the word corruption. There are 5 things that are involved in corruption. Bribery, that's 1. Number 2 is theft. Number 3 is extortion. Number 4 is misappropriation. Number 5 is the deliberate creation of chaos with intent to benefit. Now, once we put those 5 things, and this is where Parliament comes in, where laws are amended and written to address some of these issues. Because unless we start doing that, when you see somebody is corrupt, what is it that you are looking at? Is he extorting people? Is it the asking for bribes? There are some countries, and especially in the US, where corruption is very well defined, and and what I would ask that our parliament start looking at, if they really have to fight corruption, is to have what we call minimum sentencing guidelines, where if you're caught as a public official or as a private person corrupting a public official with a bribe, in order for you to gain favor or to gain a contract or whatever it is.
But what for?
There is,
Prof, we have Mwongozo Code, right? Where would we come up with another guideline than this CAC that has developed that Mwongozo Code that has to be implemented? It's just a matter of implementation at the end of the day. And that's all those actually encapsulated within the Mwongozo Code.
Then it comes then to leadership and governance. And this leadership has to come all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. And if we don't address it at that level, then we are not going to be able to fight corruption. And unfortunately, because I was listening to, I think, to NIS director the other day when he was giving his remarks after what happened last week. And part of his conversation was there is rot everywhere in each level of government. And those are areas that need to be addressed. And if we don't address those areas, in terms of corruption and other things that are happening within each level of government, we are not going to be able to solve these problems. And what we have seen with Gen Z this last 2 weeks, we are just postponing that to come and happen another time. So really, leadership has to take lead in this. And this is why I said earlier that the president has an opportunity to hit the reset button and lead by example. Now, when it comes to the cabinet, there's a difference between incompetence and there are people who are totally incompetent who are in the cabinet, and we know that. But there are also people who are good within the cabinet, and they have the merits to be where they are. And that is a job that we have to leave to the president, to be able to look at the cabinet and say, okay, this person is not serving what we expected him to be serving, and then move on to do whatever reshuffle that he needs to do. We know, and we have always said, government has been the problem. And going to what Kiprono just said, in terms of, I'm a business person. And I've done business with government, with county governments, and the biggest problem that we have right now that's affecting our medium and small enterprises is the pending bills that have not been paid. When you have your suppliers that are still waiting for you to pay them, and you have not been paid by government, sometimes you took a loan to complete the project that you're in. So that affects everybody downstream. It slows down the economic development. It finally ends up affecting the economic activities within the country.
I saw you are greatly shared to say there's a difference between incompetence and then that word didn't want to trip off your tongue. It was a choking point maybe on you. and you being given the latitude and a room to swing your cards. You as a cabinet secretary at the end of the day. Yeah, because of, you know, that particular position or the power that is looming larger over you, that you are not given that particular room. That yes, there's a diametrically, of course, opposite end of a difference where you have the freedom to do your work and being incompetent. I wanted just to raise the issue because now we're talking about even taxes, because this finance bill is all about taxes. And we have also the edible oil manufacturers now who are coming to the fore and is saying, also the 10% levy that is going to be slapped on the manufacturers of edible oil through the common external tariff is bound still to come back to our breakfast table, our dinner at the end of the day. Now, yes, we've quashed the finance bill as it stands, but we have other levies that we have, the common tariffs within the East African community that will come to bear. It will come to bear on our bread at the end of the day. It will come to bear on our television sets, our mobile phone tariffs as well at the end of the day. And this is where also they're coming and saying, hey, we will not have any other option other than to raise until the government rescinds. Because now also on the common external tariff, that is optional, right? I know it's an agreement, but it is an application of a country. And also far Uganda has done that. The application is still, it's on. Kenya had applied, but this is bound to come to the effect, I think, beginning of this month, right? Could we also maybe just address some of this? Because yes, we are bound to be paying taxes. I mean, it is the owners of every citizen to pay the taxes, but in the light of what we're going through right now, how do we address that?
Debal, let me go first. I was part of the team that met with the head of state 2 weeks before the budget, and under the auspices of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance roundtable with the different sectors making the representation about the amendments that needed to be made in the budget. And I'm glad to say that many of the proposals that were put forward, were actually adopted by government, and we saw very quickly soon after that the Parliamentary Group meeting adopted that, and the changes were made, and a wide range of issues. That was the removal of the taxation on financial transactions at M-Pesa, the removal of quite a lot of, the punitive levies, the eco-tax that had been recommended, the motor vehicle tax that had also been proposed, etc. So to an extent, I would say that consultative session that we went through yielded some results. However, Debal, it is my considered opinion that we need to broaden the conversation on the economic model. And I don't think it is, about the external tariff with our East African partners and etc. Kenya is a fulcrum economic hub. I mean, Kenya is the gateway to the Eastern African region, and that was something that God gave us. I mean, the fact that we have the best deep water port in the region, our geographical location being so close to most of the other global hubs financially, the fact that we, have the largest stock exchange in the region here in Nairobi, the fact that even our own infrastructure not just serves us but serves the broader region, behoves of us to broaden the conversation to discuss what are we going to do with manufacturing? What is the reality of manufacturing? And I remember in that specific meeting that I have just mentioned that an official of government stated that the edible oil that is coming out of the Kenyan local companies that manufacture edible oil is 97% processed, and that the value add in Kenya is only 3%. I heard that in that meeting, and I was actually taken aback. Do I know the facts of it? Of course I don't. But then if that is the truth, then we probably need to open that conversation. And we saw 2 years ago, I think, an intervention by cabinet secretary in that industry that led to a whole debacle that has never today been explained. We need to ask ourselves the hard questions on agriculture. What are our priorities? How are we going to address productivity? I have said it so many times, and I will not tire of saying, what have we done since independence? What would we say are the milestones in agriculture? Because we must remember that we are still predominantly an agricultural nation. But I come from Trans Nzoia. Has our maize production increased per acre since independence? No. Have our farming practices changed? No. What's the per capita milk production in this country? Can I surprise you? It is less than 10 liters per annum. So the reality is that the majority of our livestock in Kenya, in other jurisdictions, would qualify as pets and not productive. I went to a farm in the Arava Desert in Israel, and that farm had the highest average milk production in the world. I think it was at 68 liters. 68 liters per annum. We are dealing at sub 10 in Kenya. what are we doing with our service industry, our banking, our telcos? How are we positioning ourselves to create the next, companies that would not just speak to our local markets, but will become leading Pan-African players and perhaps even global actors. If we look at the performance even of our top companies like Safaricom over the last few years, it's not been inspiring. And it speaks to the whole conversation about what are we doing with our economy. So I think for me, it is a high time that all these conversations be brought to the table and we have a clarity of the kind of nation that we are going to bequeath to the next generations.
All right, just looking also on how the public wage bill has really gone up. 29 billion shillings is what is being put here, looking at the headlines, as the SRC freezes pay raise. And it says that public servants took home an additional 24.8 billion shillings in salaries between July and March this year. I remember there is a bill also, I think, on the floor of the House regarding the pension of the civil servants. Right, this is right up your alley as a chair of CBK Pension Fund, that they want to cushion, the civil servants from inflationary rates, so that at least when the inflation goes up, also your pension is taken care of. Question is, at whose expense? At whose expense? And why the preferential treatment for civil servants? I mean, everyone is feeling the pinch. We all Kenyans will feel the pinch of even. For the private sector, then maybe we should be gagging for that also, inflationary rate cushioning, right? And the buffer zone.
Yeah, but before I comment on the wage bill, let me go back to what Kiprono just said in terms of manufacturing. If we get agriculture right, we'll get a lot of other things right. Because most of the economic activities that we do in this country, being primarily an agricultural country, is around agriculture. And the moment we feed our people, I'm very much involved in agriculture. Right now I'm in Ethiopia, we're producing food in Ethiopia. And the issue of addressing food security and having our people fed. I've been to Israel, I've sent my team to Israel to kind of look at how these people do what they do. It's just simple use of technology and understanding the technology of farming. And once we understand the technology of farming, the basic science is the same worldwide. It doesn't matter where it is. But then there has to be some underlying assumptions within the population that we are putting in farming that we have to educate them and make it possible for them to learn some of the new ways of farming. You take a cow, for example. We have issues with feeds in this country. We've had issues with feeds. The protein levels in feeds and all that is very, very expensive, which makes it easier for other countries to produce more milk than we do because they have better systems. Like Uganda has a pretty good system on feed production. So we have to look at agriculture and invest in agriculture in ways that is going to increase our productivity in whichever area of agriculture that we are in, which is now into manufacturing of the agricultural-based products, which now leads to the manufacture of other things that support the whole entire industry. Now, having said that, the wage bill is a problem. It has been a problem. We have too much government, and it's the other day somebody was comparing the U.S. and I think it was one of the commenters, the U.S. and this country, and how big the size of our cabinet is. In the U.S., they have 15 cabinet secretaries. Okay, 15 cabinet secretaries, 29 trillion. I believe it's 29 trillion dollars. The GDP. We have, how many do we have? 21? Yeah. We have 21 cabinet secretaries and
heading to 50.
We are not even the size of California in terms of our GDP. So
it's less than Orange County.
It's less than Orange County. Because if California was a state, it would be the 5th largest country in the world in terms of GDP. So you can see how much government we have as a small country. And therefore, this is an area that needs to be addressed. And I'm hoping now the conversation that has been started following Gen Z's activities the last 2 weeks, we are going to start looking at the issue of the size of our government. Unfortunately, when the new constitution came, I think we wanted to devolve everything from the national government to such levels that it became too expensive for us to be able to run our government. On the issue of pensions, because I'm in that space, when you peg pension increases to the rate of inflation and you have automatic increase in benefits, you're going to kill the pension industry, because the money that we are paying our pensioners is the money that our investments are, and that's why for us we get concerned when NSE is not doing well, because we are heavily invested in NSE. So that need to be rethought, because it will create chaos. But if it is for the public sector, which means we have to go back into our pockets and get more money, because we have just created a huge amount of legacy costs that will follow us for the next 15, 20, 30 years as these people retire. So those are things that we really need to start looking at. And the reality of on the ground is if the economy is not performing, then pegging the benefits to the inflation rates it might be very disastrous to the economy and also to the pensions themselves.
So this is a very wrong-headed idea. Okay.
Let me just respond briefly to Prof on the NSE's performance. The Morgan Stanley Frontier Market Index has actually rated the NSE as the best performing exchange in Africa. I mean, this year we've had a 20+% increase in shareholder wealth. And talking about the market, you know, the stock exchange the securities exchange is a very, very viable option for investment, and it is something that I'm glad was embraced by this new government. And I have stated it before, and I state it again, that the big challenge with our markets is not on the demand side, it is on the supply side.
Yes.
We have insufficient products. You see, he runs a pension fund, and he must deploy his funds for posterity and for the futures of those who have invested those funds. And unfortunately, we only have 62 counters, perhaps about 30 of them actively trading. And we've actually been burning the midnight oil together with our new CEO, Frank Whitty, in speaking to the government on the privatization program. And I'm glad that Cabinet in its last meeting approved the first phase of the privatization program. However, we are still encouraging government to be a lot more brave and come forward with the substantial companies and bring them to market. What does that do? It improves, one, the governance of those enterprises. Two, it gives Kenyans and global investors an opportunity to have a share in our successful enterprises. And thirdly, it democratizes wealth. So we really need to push on the supply side. Also, with regard to scalable privately held companies, we've been having a series of meetings, and I'm glad to report that we right now have a pipeline of 3 family-owned enterprises that are, doing initial public offerings. However, capital is a coward. Capital is a coward, and it only goes to where it feels safe. So the sooner we get out of this volatile phase in our democratic dispensation, then the easier it is for our market to create long-term gain. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, who created the Berkshire Hathaway enterprise, they took a very long-term view to investing. And I'm really glad to see that our pension industry is growing very, very rapidly. And as they collect those funds from employees, they need to be deployed somewhere. And we can only build that pension industry if we broaden the offerings in our securities exchange. Let me go back to agriculture, and I completely concur with Prof.
Before we go to agriculture, I want to just also to touch on the issue of, now you're talking about the IPOs and the NSE, because the president had indicated that, yes, we want to privatize some firms, and they should be listed up at the NSE, and how that also maybe might tick up, that's IPO taking that has plateaued for the longest time ever. The question is, do you think at this particular time that will be quite a providential idea to do in light of what is going on? Because people have been questioning, why are we also privatizing some of very robust, well-doing parastatals like KPC?
I gave the rationale a few minutes ago. KPC today is a parastatal of government. It's done very well. It is a monopoly. infrastructure provider. However, you know it and I know it, that the governance of that company has been subjected to a lot of ups and downs over the last 20 years. Why is that? It's because it is in the hands of the powers that be, right? And they will, and you know, he who calls the tune, there's a piper. Who pays the piper calls the tune. The first phase of the privatization, and I have the list here with me, is the East African Portland Cement. The government also has a small shareholding of about 4% in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. There is a Housing Finance Group. There's Stanbic Holdings. There's Liberty Kenya Holdings, and there's Ever Ready. That is the first phase. I believe, and I'm completely convicted in this, that if the Kenya government brought Kenya Pipeline for a listing, if it brought the Airports Authority, these companies would be far better governed. And you see, an initial public offering does not mean that you lose control. Look at KenGen, for example. KenGen is a blue-eyed boy of government holding, because you see it's a very well-governed company. It is a listed company, and by being a listed company, it is upheld by a very high level of scrutiny by the Capital Markets Authority, who are our regulator. Your corporate governance practices must be top-notch. You must have good sustainability credentials. You must have good culture in your board level. You must hold your executives accountable. It is not the same in government parastatals. That is why many of them do not end up doing well. So the case for listing is quite, bulletproof.
Yeah, and also I think I need to reiterate on the same. As somebody who is leading a very large pension, the basket is very small.
Yeah.
And once we get that basket widening just a little, we have more choices, and we have more capital to deploy some of these, especially the IPOs that are coming. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are looking at some extra IPOs, and the issue of parastatals privatization taking place. For us, I think in the pension industry, we're always looking for appropriate organizations where we can be able to invest some of the money that we have. Right now, we have such a concentration in this small basket that is something were to happen, God forbid, and one of them goes bust. That's why I keep on praying all the time. Safaricom stays safe, because the exposure for a lot of investors who have concentrated a lot of their resources on just a few companies that are on the NSE is quite high.
The top tier.
So when we see all this turbulence taking place in the economy, politically and otherwise, we get jitters as well as investors, and and that's why political stability is extremely important, because we have chances now to start talking about growth, prosperity, and investment. In the absence of that, those discussions we cannot have.
Right. We have a few minutes just to wind up the show today. We end early a bit so that we can pave way also for City and Anke to come and take us through the other session. But I'll be remiss if we don't talk about a latest development that we have that has been gazetted by the government, and it's all about suppliers and contractors, where we know that President Ruto's administration has hit government suppliers and contractors with a new levy in regulations gazetted by Treasury. All procurement contracts signed between suppliers and procurement entities will now attract a levy at the rate of 0.03% of the value of the signed contract. This means that for a 1 billion shillings tender, one will pay 300,000 shillings to the government. This is besides taxes. And it says here that the purpose of the levy shall be to provide funds for the development of capacity through training, technical support, and mentoring of the persons involved in the public procurement and assets disposal. The regulations, of course, read that. The rules drawn by the National Treasury, CS Njuguna Ndungu, in order to facilitate the achievement of value for money in public procurement and enhance the quality of public service. Where contracts are to run for many years, the procuring entity should ensure that the full amount of the levies is determined on the total procurement contract price and shall be progressively deducted and remitted accordingly. That is also what the rules are saying here. If you read the publication today also in the Star, it highlights that. I just wanted you to contribute on this because now it seems there's a training here from government.
I think the ball, honestly, for me, that it's a joke.
It's a joke.
It's a joke. I mean, literally.
Now that has been gazetted.
Can they pay the pending bills first? Can they take?
Maybe this is a way of paying the pending bills.
Can they take Kenyan enterprises out of the misery of the quagmire of pending bills? Pending bills is such a big problem. Pending bills has caused the breakdown of enterprise. It has caused companies to collapse. It has caused families to break. It has caused children to be taken out of school. Pending bills has led to the deterioration of services. Pending bills has created further corruption as people are being enticed to cede that which is rightfully theirs to those who can facilitate the payment. Pending bills is such, a black spot in our economy that in the event that it is not dealt with holistically and quickly, we will continue to make enterprise in this country suffer. So, in my opinion, the government should shelve that levy and pay pending bills first.
Right. They want to mentor you.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm on the same opinion.
That's ridiculous.
As Kiprono, being a small business myself and others that I know that have pending bills that have not been paid. And sometimes you have to go and pay other people for you to be paid the money that, so you end up spending even your profit on the process of getting paid. And right now is at about 640 billion from the national government, and you got the county government, it's probably another 300 billion or even more. So we have more than 1 trillion that's owed to businesses out there. Now, the snowball effect to that is the deterioration of unemployment, because people have fired people, because people have closed business. Bankruptcies that are taking place as we speak. Folks that should have been hiring people are not hiring people, and therefore we are hurting ourselves as a country because the economic activity is slowing down because of these small and medium-sized enterprises. Also, don't forget, the biggest creators of jobs is not the big corporations. It's the small and medium-sized enterprises, because they're everywhere. Once we had them, we had the entire economy.
Indeed. So when you're talking about quality for money, because I think this is just to, of course, tighten the rigors of quality assurance at the end of the day. I mean, what's the purpose of going through the procurement, tendering, and of course picking the best person who will deliver quality at the end of the day?
Are they telling us so far what we have been doing? We have been dealing with incompetent people that are not trained.
That's the question.
Yeah, I think for me, we just need to see more creativity on the part of of tax policy. I mean, I think right now what seems to be happening is tax anything and everything. That moves, that flies, that is stationary, and that's not going to get us too far. I mean, we cannot tax ourselves into prosperity.
And there's no country that has ever developed through taxation.
Yeah.
No.
But let me just say very quickly, something on
prepare your headline thoughts as well.
Okay, is it my final comment?
Yes. No, not really. But I've got a minute or two.
Okay, and I'll just say two things. One is, I do believe that in order for us to resolve the problems of this country, we also need to start to consider a national safety fund that really caters for, like a safety net fund that really caters for people who lose enterprise during civil unrest. Those people in Kitengela, in Kisii, who've lost their businesses, the government should actually create a kitty that caters for those eventualities, because it has happened many times with the post-election violence of 2007, with the tribal clashes of the 90s, and with this Gen Z-led protest. So we need to find a solution to get those people back and their livelihoods back on the road. Number two, on the side of on our conversation in agriculture, we need to focus on research, incremental research. I've been to Brazil, I've been to Argentina. And what these Latin American countries have done in order to be so successful in agriculture is they have come up with their own research-based, homegrown solutions to deal with their agricultural productivity. In Kenya, we spend very little money and time and attention on the scientific aspects of agriculture, which we need not borrow from the West. We can develop it as homegrown solutions.
Fantastic. All right, let's get your closing remarks then.
And just to say that to the Gen Z, they need to register as voters. We need to be a country that allows the 5-year cycle. I don't think that we should actually be focusing our energy on the clarion call of Ruto must go. No, we need to give him the opportunity to finish. He's done 40% of the time of his first term. It's 2 years out of 5, and he needs to take stock of what he's going to do in the remaining 3 years. And we really do hope that he will redeem our generation.
Indeed, indeed. Prof, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks. I think we have not had enough emphasis on dealing with SMEs in this country. And I advocated for this during the last campaign season on the establishment of a small business administration that deals strictly with small businesses. Not even the department that is there within government right now, just like the one that's in the US. The next is to the Gen Zs. We have heard you. Keep the pressure, hold us grown-ups responsible for the things that we say we are going to do. Number 3 is the president now has a chance to hit the reset button and set this country in the right direction. Over the next 3 years of his administration, as we come to what will happen in 2027, he has that opportunity to hit the reset button and really listen to the people and act on what the people's concerns are.
Indeed, indeed. Professor Dominic Mwinja, the chair of CBK Pension Fund, thank you for coming through this morning. Quite an interesting, cogent discussion we've had with the chair also of Nairobi Security Exchange. Kiprono Kitone, thank you for coming through for that incisive, of course, discussion we've had. Of course, we pray that today being also another day that they will be turning out in force to be on the streets, of course, agitating for change. We are on the cusp of it as a country, and things are changing, the paradigms are shifting, and we hope that there is, of course, a new rebirth of the country, as Edmund Burke will always put it, when, of course, barriers are broken, new world is created, and of course now these barriers and the boundaries are being broken, and the new world is being created. Don't go away. We continue pace with the conversation. We take a short break right now, and later on the program we'll be joined by C.T. Muga and of course Anki as well to continue the conversation. Also, we are live this morning on SpiceFM. On behalf of our panelists, thank you very much for your valued company. I really do appreciate. My name is Dibail Ainea. I sign off right now, and of course on the other side of the break we continue pace with the conversation here on Morning Prime. Sokoni. Thank you.
KTN News. Get the whole story. Are you ready to make your mark in the world? To showcase your business, event, or special announcement in a way that grabs attention? Well, you can now rest easy with the Standard Group self-service platform, allowing you to book ad space in the Standard newspaper hassle-free. So say hello to your brand's visibility courtesy of Standard Ad Center, which is self-service friendly, easier, faster, and smarter. Book your ad in the Standard newspaper from the comfort of your home, office, or wherever you are. Because it really is as easy as visiting ads.standardmedia.co.ke/ads to follow the prompts and make it count for your business. A product of Standard Group PLC.
Kwa miaka mingi tumekuwa tegemeo kwa nchi nzima kwa habari za kuaminika. Matukio katika nyanja zote za maisha. Siasa.
Nyinyi ndio mlipiga kura.
Sisi tunataka amani.
Usalama.
Tutakuwa tayari kutoka saa 6 ya usiku.
Mahakamani. Michezoni.
A world record.
Naona imekuwa ni punishment.
Kwa wakati ufaao, na ndio maana tunajiboresha hata zaidi. Kwamba sasa KTN leo itakuwa ikikujia kwa matao ya juu. Sisi ndisi. Your help. News.
Faster guy, younger guy.
3 of Toulouse. Got a handy enough win here.
And coming down.
Big man in the middle. Fernando Mignala trying to stay relaxed.
Habari njema, mchezo mpya kushinda hela umewasili. Tazama utuzwe ni mchezo rahisi na njia haraka ya kushinda hela ukitumia simu yako. Kuwa mmoja wa mamia ya washindi kila siku. Jishindie kuanzia shilingi 20,000. Ni rahisi. Deposit kuanzia shilingi 20 hadi 99 kwa paybill number 145656. Account number KTN2. Shinda sasa hivi. Draws na washindi kila hour. Kumbuka, deposit kuanzia 20 bob hadi 99 bob kwa paybill number 145656. Account number KTN2. Na unaweza kujishindia hadi 1,300.
Africa Speaks, a groundbreaking show that brings you the beauty, diversity, and untold stories of Africa like never before. From the sprawling savannas to the bustling cities, from ancient traditions to modern innovations, Africa Speaks captures the essence of this magnificent continent done by Africans from an African perspective. Journey with us to the continent's tourist attraction and historical sites through Destination Africa. Learn from our ancestors' wise words on Proverb of the Day. Africa Speaks, where the voice of Africa echoes around the world.
Nilikutengenezea kitu.
From different worlds, come a trio with a shared destiny.
Ikulinde na ikuongoze.
Where will the fashion runway take them?
Mimi nitachunga maua yetu vizuri sana hadi wewe narudi.
Family business is everything.
The beauty and the beats. Shanga, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. on Maisha Magic Plus.
Sensodyne gives you long-lasting protections against sensitivity. And people come in and they're like, oh, it works. I can have ice cream and I'm not in any discomfort. I recommend Sensodyne because it works. It's brilliant.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
All right, so this is where we bring you the latest conversations. You are today witnessing a vision where TV meets radio. And right here on set, before I even introduce the guests, I want to appreciate CT from the Situation Room on SpiceFM. It's very good to have you on TV with us today, just to catch up on the current affairs.
Thank you very much for the invite, and thank you very much for the acknowledgement.
Oh, absolutely. My name is Anki Dorisombat, with us as we discuss the current affairs, the status quo of the country, but more specifically, public participation matters, accountability, citizen involvement. I want to appreciate very key, guests in studio. Of course, he was very clear on his, his name. You start with Adenga Dan Paul, who is a development practitioner with experience in civic education and budget facilitation. But the greatest umbrella here is Uraia. Thank you very much for creating time, Dan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
A lot of people would say there's more to that.
Sure.
And we'll come back to, perhaps you can tell us more on that. But let me just quickly appreciate Caroline, who is a governance expert. Caroline Nyamu is a governance and human rights specialist with a strong interest in social accountability work. Thank you, Caroline, for creating time to be here as well.
It's a delight to be here. Thank you.
Maybe I'll start with you. You just tell us more about what Caroline is about. I know there's that key interest in social accountability as we begin this conversation.
Sure. Thank you very much. Social accountability is something that's been close to my heart because it's very much around citizens using the Constitution to realize the aspirations. And it's at the heart of what we'll be speaking about today, public participation. So the face of public participation, citizens going, engaging on what priorities are being set in their communities, what projects are being done, how they're being done, and holding the government to account. So this is work that I've done for a while. I used to do this with Uraia, and now I do this independently, working with community organizations to help them to realize their aspirations.
Indeed, help them realize their aspirations. And just mentioning that you were doing this with the Uraia before you went solo, let's hear more about Uraia. DP, welcome again. Tell us a little bit more. I know it's a continuation from what you have been doing, but let's familiarize with the viewer.
So basically, picking up from what Ekaro has said is the whole issue of how do the members of the public participate meaningfully. And for purposes of today, we are specifically looking at the SIGs, special interest groups, and the way they are supposed to participate in participatory budgeting processes, and of course, so that their voices is heard as well. So that's why we are here.
Great, and we are commencing officially, City. The most favorite part of what you do is the proverb of the day. What's the proverb today?
Well, our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Republic of Angola. Angola, as you may well know, is the 7th largest country on the continent of Africa. Now, when you say 7th, somebody will ask you, so what's the largest? Well, the largest is Algeria. And then you might ask, what's the smallest? The smallest is the Seychelles. Okay? Now, those who are Kenyans will ask me, okay, we've heard all that. It's very good, thank you very much. But where do Kenyans come in? Well, that's your homework. Figure it out. You'll find out where Kenya comes in since you're a Kenyan, and then let us know. Now, for the proverb. When walking with a squirrel, you learn to climb a tree, but you also learn to steal.
Oh. All right.
Okay, let me repeat it. When walking with a squirrel, you learn to climb a tree, but you also learn to steal.
Exactly.
Yes, precisely.
Precisely.
Now, what we'd like our guests to do is to try and tell us how they resonate with this proverb. What do you think the writers of this proverb were trying to put across? But more importantly, how do you relate to this particular proverb?
Perhaps, Caroline?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking. I mean, it's it makes me think when two people cannot walk together unless they agree. So the squirrel will teach you new skills. Some of them sound like they're pretty useful, like climbing trees, stealing. So I'm wondering, is it, watch the company you keep? And we're not wholly good and we're not wholly bad.
Okay.
We're not wholly good and wholly bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know what DP has to say.
I don't know. What seems to strike my mind is a collective responsibility. But then the question is how? Collective responsibility, doing what? Mm-hmm. And how are you doing that? The same thing that you want to do collectively. So you are because I am. That's what I read from that.
Okay. You see, the beauty of asking people to give us their interpretations of it, they can't possibly be wrong. And this is the beauty of Proverbs. The purposes were always integrated, and there was a multiplicity of it. To teach, to caution, to cajole, to inform, to cause humor, to bring mirth. So it's how you relate to it.
Collective responsibility.
Well, it's a good thing, collective responsibility. It's a good point from which to now segue into our discussion this morning, isn't it?
And there we have it. Even when we have a democratic country as ours, which means, the people have a say, sovereign power, and we also do have governance that has to align with the vision of the country. We're looking at a very, they call it historic moment. And of course, this is now the third week, I believe, if we're to look at it that way, of the demonstrations. They're saying they're going back on a full shutdown, but a lot of things have happened, City. We have had changes, twists and turns, including first, deleting 20 clauses for the amendments, and then the withdrawing of the finance bill. We moved from Occupy Parliament to Occupy State House. Now Ruto must go. DP, there have been questions, and I also want to hear from Caroline here, on all this began from ignoring public participation. People feeling like they're not involved in very key issues, including budget making and the finance bill. Look at it today and the twists and turns. What would you have to say?
And it didn't start 3 weeks ago or 2 months ago. This is emblematic of a long history of government just not listening. And sometimes I say it's a little bit like the playground bully. They steal your, snack, your 10 o'clock snack today, and you let it go. Tomorrow they'll steal your lunch. The following day they'll steal your bus fare. And so we have gotten to this place where there's nothing else to rob me. And so I've got to fight back, or you're going to take my life. So what we're seeing is people who've been pushed to the wall with a government that does not listen, and this is just following on from previous governments. You will recall so many instances of things like government disobeying court orders, passing laws without public participation. So where we are at is citizens just saying, look, we've had enough. We've had enough. You've taken all that you can from us. I mean, the only thing remaining is to take our lives, and I think we will not. Enough.
Push to the wall.
Yes.
You started by saying, DP, that meaningful participation, not just participation. There are Kenyans who have actually purported that we do have public participation in the Constitution, but it's pretty much cosmetic. And speaking of the special interest groups, to now just bring you closer home, I believe there's a women, youth, persons with disability. Because someone even asked, as people are going to the streets with all these water cannons, where's the person with disability? I saw an image of a man on a wheelchair who was actually in one of these protests. Where is their place in this awareness?
Before I address what you have just said, but I wanted to first of all give a rider to what Comrade has spoken about, is where are we and why are we behaving the way seems to be the case now?
Right.
For a long time, it has assumed the case that Kenyans don't quite read, and they also don't listen, and they don't act. And allow me to go further in the act. They say Kenyans are more reactive as opposed to proactive. So what we are seeing, the outflow on the streets of Nairobi in some corner of nowhere is no more reactive now, is now being proactive. So that's what I call public participation at the best. And I say that because the main perpetrators or the main pushers of the game are members of the SIG, the youth, or the youthful nation. You like to call them Gen Z? I would call them Generation Z, if that is fine.
All right.
So, for a long time, I think the political elite have thought that the populace actually don't understand what the laws that govern this country are. They have always imagined that Kenyans, like has been the story for more than many decades, that we don't read. But the Kenyan populace has taken books they have read, and people have, done sessions on public participation and their rights, including but not even limited to where those rights are limited. Well, if you look at the first protest that we had on Tuesday, it was glamour. I mean, nobody would have expected anybody walking to the streets and no scar, no building, nothing, no fires. And so was Thursday. That was an open door. It was a trigger. It was something that has found Kenyans, and more specifically the political elite, completely out of the normal. So as we sit here today, they're asking themselves, so what next? I'm not sure even in terms of planning, the plans are working as would have been expected. In fact, early today, at 4 o'clock, I woke up and I realized that the TSC, you remember what the TSC, not the TSC, the SRG.
All right.
Salaries
Remuneration
Commission. You remember what they had done? That process, when did it begin? A while ago, isn't it?
Yes, it did.
And so for them, they didn't read or they have not been able to read the signs of the nation and decided to go further to make their proposals real. What happened? Public. So it means that Kenya is not the Kenya of yesterday. We are living in a complete new Kenya. But for purposes of this session today, SIGs need a special blend where we are saying, for example, that even as we were speaking about the 2/3 because of the marginalization of the women, I think we need to have enough regulations and enough laws that enable the process.
So what you're saying is we do not have enough laws.
Even if we had enough laws, they are not as enabling. So they must enable the SIGs to practice what they must practice, for example.
Can you talk more about this? When you say enabling, for instance, if one were to ask, how does this manifest? What exactly would we see that would then instruct us that, yes, this particular legal structure is actually enabling? What would we need to see?
So, assuming that we use a case for the PWDs, for example, must the PWDs be nominated to Parliament every time? Do you think that should be the case? I don't think so. I mean, being disabled is not being enabled. You understand? They're simply abled differently. And we have people who are able differently in Parliament, and they were able to get into Parliament just like any other person.
So the election process?
The election process. So a few of those acts, a few of those sections of the Act, of the Election Act, need to be conducive, enabling, you know.
But let me ask you the question. That view that you say is progressive, and it is what should be done. In fact, I would say that is aspiration. If you are to ask the common citizen of this country, common means everybody, not just those in high offices, what their view on people living with disabilities should be. The writers of our constitution understood that there are certain members of our society who, for them to participate meaningfully, you need to have positions that are not only created, but affirmative action has to be put in place.
Precisely.
Because in the absence of that affirmative action, they will not be considered.
Precisely.
And women fell into that same bracket. Because the role of women is clear. It is clear when you look at what they do on a daily basis in this country and how it is without their support, the nation as we see it would not exist.
It wouldn't.
But it needed, again, affirmative action for women to be given an opportunity to actually, for people to see what they can do. Okay, now, if we've had a period of time when this has been the norm, and you say, okay, we've now seen it, let us now move on, let's normalize this, I would agree with you. But right now, it's a little too early. People haven't embraced disability. We look at our own buildings. We look at the way we treat people living with disabilities. We haven't embraced it. There's a journey we need to go through before we can get to a point where we can say disability has been integrated and it has been normalized in our society. As of now, it has not been normalized.
Including in the infrastructure as well.
Yes, it has not been.
Just to add to what you have said,
yes.
That disability has not been normalized.
Yes.
It's basically telling the populace that the youth, the constituents of the youth, until yesterday was not normalized.
That is true.
So if we still need to wait until that comes to the able differently, and therefore the women, then you can imagine what Kenya is waiting for.
And I mean, and we had this conversation last week. Remember, they're not just special interest groups. They're people who are previously marginalized. They were on the margins of society. And I completely agree with you, Siti, that there needs to be affirmative action, and the Constitution envisaged that. I think where the gap is the goodwill or the political will to make this happen. If it was important, if something is important to you, you move heaven and earth. You do what needs to be done to get it done.
I just want to interject a bit, talking about political goodwill, because, of course, they say they put up tents. A number of members of parliament, who I am seeing here on page 3 of one of the dailies, saying they fear to visit constituents, spoke on a televised interview, said they went back to their people, they involved their people. We saw a number of people travel for public participation, give their submissions. What exactly do you mean, goodwill of the political class?
So they spoke to their people, but then they still went to Parliament and voted for the finance bill. Is that what we're talking about now?
It's logic, isn't it?
But think about it, and I'm glad they've said they spoke to the people. Did they listen to their people?
Well, that's the thing.
That they spoke, that we get.
Yeah.
And they speak all the time.
Yeah, but
and what we're discussing now and what we are witnessing is the cumulative effect of their speaking as opposed to listening.
So they don't listen.
Yes.
And yet, I mean, of all the roles that we said, a lot of people hopefully know that the member of parliament is a representative.
Yes.
I mean, the Kiswahili word couldn't capture it better. Ni mjumbe.
Yes.
They take a message and they take it back.
Yes.
They take the message from the citizens, they bring it to parliament, and then they come in. So exactly how did they exercise their representation responsibility? By talking to the people and then still coming and disregarding. If they listened, it seems rather clear that there was no listening, or very little of it.
But even if they listen too clearly, like seems to be the case, and they got into parliament and their work was basically now to legislate, how comes, and I don't want to quote names, that a few of them were seen in public glamour, and they said the document that was being read to them was so voluminous that they didn't read everything. So they only voted in because they thought it was a yes and a yes. I mean, how does that become the
Does it seem like a narrative we hear last year as well, 2023, during the debate of the finance bill 2023? You started by saying Kenyans have been purported to be not very good fans of reading. But when you represent, you need to read.
Even further.
Yeah. And how do you do public participation? What do you tell the people when you speak to your people if you have not read this in entirety? I want to talk about the capacity building. All right, and programs, because part of what we're doing here is civic education as well.
Yes.
And even as you're talking about the SIGs, and what I know here is we're talking about what capacity building initiatives and educational programs, to be just very serious as a country, are necessary to ensure that we understand the governance processes. Because you saw the people who are going to TikTok, some would say that's wrong information, this is misinformation. I think we should talk about this. The how we actually do public participation.
Well, the how moment is with us here, wouldn't you say? Because the very things that were not envisioned, nothing that is happening now had been envisioned. So when we talk of preparedness, those who were supposed to be prepared were clearly caught flat-footed because they didn't anticipate it, they didn't expect it. But also, it means that when we enter the communication age, when we enter the 21st century, some of them forgot to move and actually join the 21st century. Because if people are communicating and in your mind you still think that there needs to be some rally in some public place for you to speak to people, it is that same thinking that makes you say that this group are leaderless. Because you think you need someone to stand on a rostrum or a podium to speak. They are podiums. They are gatherings. The only thing is they're not physical.
Exactly.
As for meetings, there are voices that are listened to more than others. And those voices don't even need to be in the country. So people who live on that particular solar system, they understand exactly what's going on. They are communicating every day. They are clear about the directions. It's the rest of us. The term we used to use as analog is the rest of us who are still stuck in the 20th century, who are playing catch up.
And I think I would add to that. This week I was having a conversation with some Gen Zs, and they were asking a lot of questions. So like, okay, fine, now that the finance bill has been withdrawn, so now what next? What do we do? And I also want to know, what's the job of my member of parliament? I was very surprised to hear that chiefs still exist. What is their role? What do they do? If I wanted to speak to my member of parliament, can I just call him to come to our local, playground and talk to us? Where do I find him? Is it okay if I call them? I think that's where, if we're going to do public education, civic education, that's where it needs to start. It can't be, you know how you go to primary school, I guess now it's different. I don't know what you call school these days.
Let's call it school.
School.
Yes.
And you start with grade 1 or grade 0,
yes, that's it.
And you start with,
you're right
1 plus 1,
junior
1 plus 2,
secondary.
and then,
yes, exactly,
and then, by the time you get to class 3, you're doing algebra, and it has to, you have to move away from the formulaic and meet people where they are at. And I have a friend, he has I hope I can remember the line. He has a very good line. He says, every day is a budget day. Every issue is a budget issue. And every person is a budget actor. I think that's what he says. So whatever people are talking about today, whatever is of primary concern is a budget issue. And it will find its way in our public budgets. So how do we tailor our conversations to make them, with civic education, public participation, how do we tailor them to be budget discussions? The fact that I go to the local health center or the local dispensary, I can't get medicines or I can't see a doctor, how is that a budget issue? Okay. The fact that my child is having to walk 7 kilometers to go to the nursery school, early childhood center, how do I make that a budget issue? And therefore kind of instigate a sense of urgency that I need to be in that budget discussion that determines where nursery schools, and that's a laziness on my part, kindergarten, are going to be constructed. And how do I get into what conversations, what spaces do I need to get into to make sure that there are drugs in my health facility? Instead of, and we really want to move from this narrative of serikali saidia. You're the boss.
No, as Carol speaks to the how and trying to, so that we have a whole cycle.
Yes.
And using the budget as a strategy, budget making process as a strategy to effective public engagement for that matter. I like telling people wherever I go that please organize yourself. You can only speak to something that you are part of. The generalities have led us to where we are, because people have always assumed that Kenyans will just look at you at face value and period. People need to get organized, and I'll give you a case using education, because she has used education. And did she call it nursery? Allow me to call it early child care.
Okay.
It's okay. Now, there is a policy framework, a government policy framework that speaks to the guides that inform what a construction of a classroom should look like. Now, how many Kenyans have an idea what it should look like? It is 8 by 6 meters. And the composition should have 25, to be precise, 25 of the kindergartens. And even there are the specifications for the kind of seats those kids need to have. I mean, how many of us are interested in that? Or do we only pick our kids and drop them? And that's fine. I think we have come of age when we need to get organized at a specific area, organized at a specific sector level. Then that way, public participation would be meaningful. You know, when we get into an uproar and say, your salary has been increased, the question should be, why should your salary be increased? For what purpose are you serving us for your salary to be increased? I mean, why should we pay, for example, are they called the ECD teachers or the junior secondary school, 14,000, and someone takes home 1 million. I mean, what is the rationale? So until we get to that point in time, these others would be hula baloo.
I think what I also just wanted to bring in, and like Citi, alluded to earlier on, things are changing so fast. We need to move with the times. And one thing that caught my attention through these 3 weeks, if I would put it, of Generation Z, of course, on the forefront, but the rest of Kenyans joined them, is how social media blew our minds. Absolutely and totally. Citi said they're used to, people sitting on pulpits and raising, their voices, or probably, there's been a war of words here and there. But this X spaces, and I'm talking about in terms of capacity building, the Generation X literally have shown us the power of social media. Can we use it to our advantage?
Sure.
And how?
Actually, it's being used before our very eyes. If we choose to close our eyes and not see, then we won't see it. But look, right now, if you look at our voters, those who are eligible to vote, this youthful population that we refer to comprise 67%. So they can decide who it is they want to govern, 67%. If you talk about information, telephone subscription in this country is 118%, 118%. Okay? There's 60 million phones in this country and we're only 56 million. So it means there are people who have more than one phone. Now, the communication age isn't waiting for us. It's actually here. And it's moving along swiftly, very, very swiftly. Now, those who are enjoying and benefit from it are those who understand it and have latched on. Again, this age group are the people who have latched on and they are actually utilizing it. You're talking about understanding and reading. Have we not witnessed the finance bill being broken down in communal languages? Have we not seen it being summarized? So for easy consumption. So public education, as we watch, has taken a completely different turn.
Completely.
So what does it mean? The elected member of parliament stands a chance of being irrelevant as the purveyor of information to the public. Because this very public have decided and determined they are going to inform themselves. Why? Because from among the members of this youthful public are people who are educated in very many disciplines. So they're using their training and their discipline to pass across the messages that they think are critical. And specifically, they've decided to engage. Previously, they were disengaged, completely disengaged. Now they are engaged. Now, the question that should be at the forefront of our minds, moving forward, and here moving forward swiftly, what is this engagement going to mean? Remember, 80% of our population in this country are below the age of 30. Okay, so that is something that one should consider. This group of citizens have understood they have the power. Now that should be a scary thing.
It is.
If you think you are in power, because this group has understood. Now, what are they going to do with it?
And they are doing it. I mean, it's Citi, you were talking about just expanding on the finance bill, and just using that same social media. Somebody said, "Hang on, do you know that there's another law about land, and your land is going to be taken?" And the tables have turned. A couple of years. Well, not even a couple of years ago, up until maybe 3 weeks ago, people like Dan Paul and I were struggling with things like accessing information from government, because government tends to be very opaque and very, as one young lady in Eldoret said, very mean with the information and truth. And now they're highlighting some of the things that are going on that, legislators or those who hold power do not want citizens to know. So what's happening is that there is, because of the varied or the diverse interests, this information is now being made public, and people are then saying what needs to be done. And I think that law was actually pulled back, or it's under review or something like that. So it does actually say that we need to be very deliberate or very strategic now, using this kind of expanded space to demand for information, to have these conversations that, rather than wait for my local MCA to call me for a meeting, come for my meeting.
You see, the opportunity for them to join exists. Again, the decision-making process of there's a change here. What do I do with it? How do I plug myself into this change? Because this change isn't going to be reversed.
No, it may not. The reverse psychology.
Not even may not. It will actually not be reversed.
Irreversible.
No, it's not reversible. Not this one. The people who say there's a clawing back. Not so. The clawing back is possible when those who actually understand that they are the ones who are the employers have fully understood their mandate and their role. Before, when they're asleep, yes, you can claw back anything.
Yeah, but people are awake.
But when they're awake, you have it's a tall order.
Yeah. Some would actually say they're woke. And I want to hear from DP here because the accountability really, because I know we've spoken about, there are certain things that this particular group of people, and Kenyans to be specific, have proposed the president should do, including touching on his own cabinet. But you see, the Constitution of Kenya is clear on accountability. Article 153 on the decisions you make, responsibility and accountability of the cabinet individually and collectively. I mean, even these are discussions we need to have.
Sure.
How do we, like he said, plug and be part of the solution? And as far as the public participation is concerned, you're not just waiting for the action to be taken, you want to be part of this conversation. How do other Kenyans flow with these proposals, give their points of view? How does it get to the president? Remember the different, blame games that came when the protests, someone has not really informed the president, so he was not at par with the people, all these kind of conversations. But now we want a solution. What way forward, after this?
So the way I look at it, from where I sit, we have an opportunity where the Gen Z, who constitute, did you say 67%?
The voting, I'm talking about those who are eligible to vote in that particular bracket of people we refer to as youth, 67%.
As I sit here this morning, I am positive because I heard the president of this great country, I forgot his name, but the president of this great country, say in one of the interviews that was held a while ago that the Electoral and Boundaries Commission would have the commissioners appointed for that matter. I say that because I would want to see those who qualify to be voters registered as voters. That is entry number one. This is a political space. In the political space, you got to get that entry, the visa code, to get into the political space. One of it is the electoral card. So I'm looking forward that immediately the commissioners the commission is constituted, pretty so, and then of course the rest of the matter would be a thing of the past. My call to the Gen Z is to register in large numbers because I know they can. The Gen Zs, the women, and the people with disabilities, for me, is they register as voters in large numbers. Meaning what? If they register in large numbers, then they have opportunities to get the space of leadership. My catch-22 now here is, so who is that will get into leadership? What is it that we have put inside of this person who will get into leadership after what we have gone through? Because history, for students of history who are here, and I'm sure Doc understand this much better than we do, is many times those who have agitated for change many times don't end up into bringing about that change themselves. Unfortunately, that is the case.
Why do you think that happens?
Maybe you can tell us.
No.
As a historian.
Well, as somebody who studied history,
yes.
I'm not really a historian, and who continues to study history. Remember, those who agitate for change want to see certain things happen. So, given that they're human beings, when that happens, they figure their job is done.
Can you imagine?
Well, yes. I mean, if, for instance, throughout the age you're talking about let's start with the 70s, then 80s, then 90s. You get to a point where you then have a constitution. You're only human, you'd feel, you know something. I think we've done what we wanted to do. So, once, and remember, I started from the 70s, 80s, 90s. You're talking about 3 decades down the line. By the time you get into the 2000, the new millennium, and somebody has been at it all that time, at some point they will feel, you know, I've actually done my bit. Now, so the question I would be asking is, how exactly do we inculcate this knowledge that we've had, or the collection of knowledge that we have, so that those who now are at the forefront of change actually understand it? Because if you talk Kenyatta 1, they have no clue what you're talking about. That's history. Moi, again, history. Even Kibaki, for some of them, is history.
Probably.
Recent history is Uhuru Kenyatta, and now present. You see? The only reason why someone like Raila Odinga is still current is because he's been in all these discussions except Kenyatta 1. You one sees him as a constant. But the point is, what is it that you feel that the younger citizens have learned? I'm asking this question because many people who listen have young people in their homes. Do they actually listen to these young people in their homes?
Sure.
Listen, as in saying, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'd like you to talk to me about this and tell me, explain to me. Let me understand where you're coming from, what you're thinking.
Yeah. And I'm coming to that because because of time, you know, you spoke about going out and you know, voting because that's the power you have. But you know that over time, there's been the apathy, you know, there's been the trust deficit. And even if you hear, the question has been, when will you stop doing this? You are making us lose confidence day and day. And I want to appreciate what, you know, City has said. Decades, we're looking at a whole pattern here. And talking to someone earlier on today, City, someone, you know, asked me, DP and Caroline, there is pro and cons of each government. Maybe if we start with the realization of, is the resigning, all right, of the person in leadership, DP said, we forgot his name, would it be a solution, all right, entirely? And you just told us a proverb, the squirrel will teach you 2 things. To climb is positive, to steal, I'm not sure it's very positive. How do you work around that, even for the generation? There's some understanding, some listening will lead us somewhere, but I'm not thinking we're at a place where there's a section that are saying, now stop it, but there's a section that's saying, press on, regardless, until we have some people in authority step down.
We have a challenge in this country. We don't vote people in, we vote people out. So I get angry. Well,
exactly.
I mean, in 2013 was the first election. In Nairobi, we voted Kidero as the governor. In 2017, we didn't vote in Sonko. We voted Kidero out.
Confirm?
Okay.
That's exactly what I was
in
speaking
Kiambu, in Kiambu, who was Kabogo was the governor.
Yes.
In Kiambu, we did not vote Waitito in. We voted Kabogo out. Well,
are you saying that if we look at the votes,
the pattern?
Yes, no, yes. I'm talking about numerically, the number of votes cast. They represent the disenchantment that the people of those counties had with the person who had held that seat.
Exactly.
I see.
But I don't think that should be the mentality, because you're coming and there's a place for frustration and anger.
Okay.
But then how do you actually harness it in the intervening period? This year's between 2022 and 2027. See it as a job interview for your member of parliament. What are they doing in terms of representing you? How are they performing? What are they doing in the way of exercising oversight? What questions are they asking the executive? When they receive the audit reports from the Auditor General, what do they do with those reports? Do they ask questions of the executive? When it comes to what's the other? So they represent the exercise oversight and they legislate.
Yes.
When it comes to making laws, what kind of laws are they making? Are they laws that help us to realize our agenda, our aspirations as persons with disability, as women, as young people? In those 5 years, what does somebody sort of get voted into Parliament and then never shows up? In one of the previous governments, I think it was the MP for Ainab